You've got 4 steps. Now, I want to make this clear in EntreLeadership. If you read the book, we have 12 steps to a great hire. This is not 4 other steps on top of that. This is just from Jeremy's vantage point as one of our top recruiters and having led this initiative. You almost would say it's the stages or the phases that you go through.
Yes.
So we're going to break this down. And the step number 1 is decide. Number 2 is find. Number 3 is interview. Number 4 is train. So let's start at the beginning. What do you mean when you say decide?
Well, when it comes to, hey, I want to hire for this role, I think that one of the things that's missing so often is actually being intentional and deciding what I want this role to be. We call a KRA, Key Results Area, here at Ramsey. We say that's basically their job description. And sometimes I've found that teams really don't know exactly what they're looking for. They know I need a person to do a function. But they haven't invested the actual time in deciding on what I want this to be. What is the persona of the person who's going to be doing this role? Is there something unique about this? It's why, as a recruiting team, what we do is we partner with the leaders to walk through an intake meeting where you're kind of forming, what does this look like?
So what does it sound like when you say a team knows they want somebody, but they don't really know specifically what they're looking for? What do they tend to ask for? Is it like, we just have this pain, help us find a live person? Like what's that? How do you know, like, oh, they haven't really done this work yet based on how they're talking?
Well, they'll talk about in generic things. Like they'll talk, I need a salesperson. All right, what do you want that salesperson to do? Well, I want them to call and make sales. And you're like, okay, what type? Are we talking inside sales? Are we talking outside sales? Like you start to form this picture of what does this person look like. I wrote down what we do in our intake meetings. I find that it's actually really helpful. And one of the things that we do is we're looking at what are the top skills, like what are the non-negotiables, what are nice to haves, what's experience needed. For this role, is there any type of certification or experience that's actually required? Are there soft skills, personality, team dynamics? Are there any people on the team that right now you're just like, I would clone this person exactly?
That's a good one, because if you kind of are stuck on soft skills, but you can look at somebody that embodies all those things, you can kind of just go to school on them and go, well, they show up early, they smile, they hustle, they're always building everybody else up, they seem to be teachable. I mean, you can just kind of go, okay, what are the attributes of that person that I love? And then kind of suck those over into part of the filter criteria for the job that you're posting.
Oh, absolutely. That's when you can see a rock star, you can see someone, and then you can interview that person. And that's what we'll talk about as a recruiting team. We'll be like, well, can I shadow that person for an afternoon? Can we go to some stand-ups, see what that looks like? And oftentimes you can start to hone in on why this person does well.
Well, and I think that's the key. Why do they do well? You're answering that question. Why are they a rock star? You know, if you just tell somebody, hey, we're looking for a rock star, it's such a vague, it sounds good, right? But it's super vague and nebulous. And you got to go, okay, what's the ingredients of a rock star?
Right.
What are the character qualities? What are their skills? Why do we call that person a rock star? And I think it's difficult because, you know, it's taking time to sit down and think and to develop a vision for the role. And I know I've been guilty of that before, where I've been that guy going, I need a salesperson, and I don't have time to sit down and think. But if you don't do that thinking work and actually build out the role and partner with your recruiter in this case to really give them a super clear vision, they're going to go hire somebody and then they're not going to be a fit. And they're going, but they're a rock star. And you're like, yeah, I guess I didn't tell you what I meant by rock star, you know?
And this applies whether or not you're using a recruiter or you're doing it yourself. And actually spending some time deciding. That's why I really... For a while, I kicked around, what is the idea? What is the word? And I like action. I'm a simple person when it comes to that, because when you're talking about decide, you can talk about vision, you can talk about KRA, you can talk about all these different things, but you get to be the one that decides what you want this to be. Because here's the thing, you may have been replacing somebody, and this might be a great opportunity to adjust the role.
Yeah.
Maybe there was something that didn't work with it. One of the things I love to point out for teams is, do you know what winning looks like in this role? And quite often, the answer is no. So if you can't describe to me what somebody who came in here, what it would look like if they were actually winning, then how are you going to know when you have the right person? And so there's things like that when you're diving into the deciding phase of hiring, yeah, there's a lot of kind of soul searching. There's a lot of brainstorming. There's filling up whiteboards of impact. There's deciding what results would look like. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when you start to interview people, you're going to want to know when somebody's actually could fall into this category. Because you want to set people up to win.
Do you find in that decide phase that it's helpful to spend time thinking about why you haven't hired this person yet? You know, I was coaching a business leader earlier this week, and they were talking about business development as an area. They need more salespeople, and they're still doing a lot of their sales. And I was just kind of pressing in going, okay, what's keeping you from making this hire? And he said, well, I'm nervous that we've got a great reputation and it's my name and they might screw it up. Or I might bring them on board and it's a lot of overhead. And if I'm committed to this overhead and they don't ROI, you know, it's interesting sometimes if you kind of go, why have I not hired this person yet? And you might have even some emotional blockers that you haven't realized you've got to get over to give yourself permission to really fill up that whiteboard with everything that you want.
You know, that makes me think of something that I've thought about for quite some time when it comes to hiring, because I saw it in myself. There were oftentimes decisions that I'd make that were all based off of fear. And what if I add the wrong person? What if I don't have enough time to lead them properly? What if they get here and it's a nightmare? What if all of a sudden our business can't support this person and we have to find a new home for them? I think that for a lot of business owners and a lot of hiring managers, hiring leaders, at the end of the day, fear, if you're not careful, can drive a lot of what you do and don't do in the hiring process.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that fear is there. It's good to label it. And I think also as you fill up the whiteboard with all of the things that are the value of this role, I have found that the more time I spend actually building out how great this role could be if we got the right person, the more that fear kind of shrinks.
Right.
Because then it's not just a person, it's actually a solution to a problem. And I think you got to come at it from an opportunity-based vision, not a desperate, we're just reacting to pain that we have. And it takes some thinking work to actually do that.
Yeah, that's why I love one of our core values of Ramsey Solutions is fear not. And so when you start finding at the end of the day, is the reason I'm not making this decision because of fear? All right, then we need to press through. If it's something else, that's different. But if it's just fear, there's always going to be fear present.
So stage one, decide. You're spending time thinking about what you really want. You're making a decision on these are the attributes that we're looking for. You're actually creating space to think and write down whether you're doing it yourself or you're working with a recruiter. What else in this stage?
Well, one of the phrases that I've heard quite a bit. Now, remember, I'm still new to recruiting. A year and a half is what I say to the actual career of recruiting. But hiring, it's 5 years beyond that. But I kept hearing the phrase could do versus have done. And that's something that people have brought up quite a bit. And what most of the time they mean is when you're hiring for a role, it's either going to fall into the category of this, or you're looking for someone who could do this, meaning there's universal skills that could translate, or have done. An example would be, have done would be if I'm looking for a developer that needs to code in a certain language, I need to figure out somebody who has done that in the past. Versus a salesperson that might have some raw talent. But I heard that phrase quite a bit, and our head of HR, his name is Armando Lopez. He's been in this industry for 30 plus years.
We've had him on this podcast.
Yeah,
so.
He's great, and I learned a lot from him all the time. One of the things he and I were talking about recently was that idea that when you talk about could do versus has done, you always start with has done. It's just what you're actually looking for in the has done section. Meaning that when you're looking at a resume, for instance, and you're deciding that I need a salesperson, I might not have I've sold this specific gadget before. But what you're actually talking about is their actual competencies, their characters of people. You're trying to look for someone, do they have a theme of being good with people? Have they talked in their current role? Are they selling something totally different? But is there something that can transfer? And that's something I've been really thinking about quite a bit in recent weeks, of that idea of everything points to has done. It's just what are you looking for in that category?
I love that as an interview question, just asking somebody, what have you done? And then just shut up. And oftentimes somebody that hasn't done anything will go to, well, I worked at this company for this many years and I got promoted to this role. And it's like, no. What have you done? What did you do? What did you build? What did you do? What did you produce? What team did you pull together that was dysfunctional? If you can talk in terms of, here's things I executed on. I mean, if you're interviewing, this is a tip. If you're interviewing, speak in terms of the utility you provided to the organization. What did you do? What did you make happen? And not just, well, I hung out at this organization for X amount of time. And it's important to think through your accomplishments. Like, what have you actually accomplished?
And what did you learn during that time? What part of that role would you never want to do again? There's so many things that when you start diving into the experience, I found that people love to talk about their experience. If they're not very self-aware, sometimes they'll talk a little bit too much in this area as well.
That can be a warning flag as well.